Welcome to Hard Knocks Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas. I hope to have this out by October 12th. Again, very raw, cut to the chase podcast. The reason we're doing this kind of out of order is because of the events in the Middle East that started on Saturday, October 7th. What we'll get into in a minute with what's happening in the Middle East with Palestine and Israel. That happened October 7th, which was this past Saturday. Mm-hmm. And I've been, again, probably more than most, because, if you guys don't know this, you'll see it in the future podcasts I've already filmed, but I'm a history buff. I love military history in general. So seeing this, it has a deep historical connection. So naturally I won't keep up with it, but I've been, reading articles, watching news every single day, trying to learn as much as I can about it, especially the thought of doing this podcast and trying to inform you guys that might be watching that don't know who Palestine is, who Hamas is, where Israel is even at, why it's so important for one side or the other, and what the history is of it, because it's a very complex history. So hopefully I've gathered enough accurate and verified information that I can give you guys accurate history of it, why it's so complex, and again, what our thoughts might be on it. So we can go ahead and jump right into it. I wrote it down. So what's happening? It's the Israel-Palestine conflict. Israel has Jewish people. It's the only Jewish state in the world. And then Palestine, they're in this place called the Gaza Strip and this other place called the West Bank, which is, funny enough, on the east side of Jerusalem, but it's west of the Jordan River. And again, Israel is in the Middle East. It's by Saudi Arabia. It's just northeast of Egypt. If you get out and look on a map, you can see it. It's southeast of Iran. It's along the Mediterranean, and the Jordan River is on the right. So that gives you an idea of where it's at. So to start, this is, by definition, a holy war, a war of religion. It is the Jewish religion against the religion of Islam. But we go back to biblical times. Muslims, which are Islam, and Jewish, which is Judaism. They both believe in the Old Testament of the Bible. Again, for Islam, I don't know if they believe it wholeheartedly, or if they have their own version of it. I'm not exactly sure, or if Jewish people have their own version of it. But either way, in biblical times, you had this guy named Abraham. Most people probably have heard of Abraham. He had two sons. He had Isaac and he had Ishmael. I probably butchered the pronunciation of that. But he had two sons. Long story short, Ishmael and his mother Sarah, because Isaac and him were half brothers, different moms, both sons of Abraham. Well, Ishmael and Sarah got, I don't know if banned is the right word, but they went to the desert. They got more or less exiled, I believe. Very long story short. So that's kind of where that's where the whole Islam and Palestine and so many Muslims get their, I guess, hate of Judaism and Jewish people, and their disagreements, because after that the religion kind of takes a different route in layman's terms. So that's very old, thousands of years ago history. What we're really going to get into is the history in the past 70-something years. So World War II happened, Allies won, and Jewish people, of course, Adolf Hitler killed 6 million Jews, and at that time, Jewish people did not have Israel. They did not have a home. What is now Israel is, at the time, was controlled by Palestinians, which, if I'm not mistaken, Palestinians, they are the descendants of Ishmael. So in 1947, the United Nations, they divided the British Mandate, because Britain controlled all the area. They divided the British Mandate between Palestinians. They put them in Arab and Jewish states. They told the Jewish people, they said, hey, you can go back home to your promised land and you will live there. Well, people already lived there, and they were the Palestinians. So they were not, Palestinians were not happy that, Jewish people, their religious rivals, if you will, just came back into their land. So it was polka dotted tribes, more or less, or villages set up. So that naturally was not going to work well. Well, in 1948, Israel was officially created, and in that being created, the first Arab and Israeli war occurred. That lasted until 1949. The war ends. Israel won the war, and approximately 750,000 Palestinians were displaced from where they used to live. This was in 1949. So at that time, the territory, they decided to divide it into three parts. You had Israel, which took up the chunk of it, and then you had the Gaza Strip, and then you had the West Bank. Well, Israel, of course, that's where the Jewish people resided, and then Gaza and the West Bank, that's where Palestinians went. They were both Palestinians, no difference in them, they were just different locations. In the 1950s, Israel would fight with Egypt, Syria, Jordan. It was constant conflict all the time, just because not just the Israelis coming back to make their country, but also the religious differences. In 1967, Israel attacked Egypt and the Syrian Air Force. They called that the 6-Day War. And then in and also in the 6-Day War, Israel gained control over Gaza from Egypt. So Egypt controlled Gaza at the time, and its people. 6 years later, you may have heard the Yom Kippur War occurred. Egypt and Syria attacked Israel. They gained some territory back, but it was mainly just casualties and not so much of territory shifting. In 1979, there's this thing called the Camp David Accords, signed, ending a 30-year conflict, which is about how long they were fighting since the country was made. That was between Israel and Egypt. That didn't involve Syria or Jordan, that we'll see later. And in 1987, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians from Gaza and West Bank rose up against Israel, or mainly the Israel government, and that was known as the first Intifada. It's a very hard word to say. And that basically means, in the Arab language, it means shake well or shaking well. Why they named it that, maybe they just wanted to shake things up, I don't know. So that happened. Nothing too crazy there. In 1993, Oslo I Accords, that basically mediated the conflict, and that set up a framework for Palestinians to govern themselves, because up to this point, Egypt, they governed them for a while, and then Israel took Gaza from Egypt, and then Israel governed the Palestinians. And then in 1995, also two accords that basically said that Israel would leave 6 cities and 450 towns. That was basically giving the Palestinians more freedom. And then in the year 2000, Palestine launched the second Intifada if that's how you say it. And the reason for this, again, the religious history that goes back here is unimaginable. Like, it is the most religiously complex. I mean, you could go into religion here all day talking about it. I mean, it is unbelievably. You have to be a professor to understand all of it, I think. But that happened because Israel controlled basically Islam holy sites in the West Bank, and at the edge of the West Bank you have Jerusalem. Well, there's different holy sites in Jerusalem. Islam thinks they should have it for Islam, and then Judaism thinks they should have it for Judaism. So there's very, very conflicting views on that. That war lasted until 2005. But because of that second Intifada, in 2002, Israel built a barrier wall around the West Bank, which a lot of people disagreed with it, but it is what it is. And then in 2006, Hamas, which is a terrorist organization, Islamic extremist group, they basically won these elections, and they governed beside this government called the Fatah, and this is in the Gaza Strip. This is not West Bank. West Bank, that's something different. That's a different government that has Hezbollah, if you've heard of that. That's the Islamic State that kind of controls that area right now. But Hamas governed with Fatah, I think is how you say it. They did not get along. They ended up fighting quite a bit, and now Hamas basically controls the Gaza Strip. No problem. Not much opposition there. And as this was happening, since the 1990s, most of the Western world, when I say Western world, Israel is considered Western world because it's more of like a democracy stance. So a lot of Europe, America, Canada, Britain, France, Israel, all these democracies that hold, elections and different, true elections, different things, have a different way of thinking. They had considered Hamas a terrorist group since the 90s, so before they even came into power in the Gaza Strip, they considered them a terrorist organization. And then in 2014, Hamas fired 3,000 rockets at Israel. Israel responded and attacked Gaza City. Egypt brokered a peace treaty, and that was after 73 Israelis died in that conflict, and then 2,251 Palestinians died in that conflict. And then in 2015, Palestine president no longer... He didn't want to be bound by the Oslo Accords that had occurred that said, hey, this is your land, this is your land, this is your land. He said, no, we don't want to do that. So that's why, since that time, the fight has picked up quite a bit, is because the president, I believe he is Fatah. I might be wrong on that, but I think he is Fatah. But anyways, he's supposed to be like the president of the Palestinian people. He basically said, heck to those Oslo Accords, those dang things. I don't like that land at all. So he said, we're just not going to follow them anymore. So he didn't. And so they've been trying to expand and fight Israel in that sense. And then in 2020, very recently, Israel made Jerusalem the capital. And I mean, Judaism made this the most holy spot in the world, Jerusalem, their capital. So that's not going to go well. They didn't like that. They've been fighting ever since. And that is the mouthful and still the extremely simplified version of the complex history of what's going on with Palestine. Again, in the Gaza Strip, you'll see on the news Gaza City being bombed by Israeli airstrikes. That's why. And then it brings you to today and what happened on Saturday. So Saturday, Hamas, it was I want to say 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur war, I think it was. It's also a very holy day for Israel. I forget the name, forgive me. But the Jewish people had a holy day. So Hamas entered the southern border of Israel from Gaza City and Gaza. They ran into some military, but they mainly attacked civilians. Right now, the death toll is at 1,200 plus, and this is just from Saturday. They're still getting the numbers up. 1,200 plus people killed. That's Israelis for the most part. That's also 22 confirmed Americans that are killed. Not American troops, I don't believe. I believe it's all American civilians. Really American Israeli civilians that live over there. There's a Thailand national. There's German nationals, Italian nationals, all in Israel for different reasons. And this was it wasn't a very, they're a terrorist group. It wasn't a tactical, we're going to take this land. They call it an incursion because they just walked over to kill as many Jewish people as they could. That's their thing. We're going to go kill as many Jewish people as we can. Don't care who they are. Don't care if they're women, children, old, young. It doesn't matter. If they're Jewish, if they live in Israel, then they are a target. So that's a very, very sad thing, and we can go into that. We know, as I said, over 1,200 civilians have been killed. There has also been, they don't know how many American, and I stress American, because obviously, we're in America, we live in America. Our Americans should be able to travel the world and not be in danger like they are. So, Hamas has taken an unknown number of hostages back. They believe they're keeping them in a tunnel system below Gaza City. They're kind of hiding down there, and from the reports that I've seen, basically all the Palestinian civilians are kind of stuck on top, being used as almost human shields against these airstrikes that Israel is conducting right now. And then all of the Hamas militants are in the tunnels, doing as they please. To give you an idea, Gaza City, it is 25 miles long, and it is on average 5 miles wide. 7 miles wide, I believe, is the widest point. If you think about that, it's not that big for holding 1.9 million people. It's one of the most densely populated places on Earth, which is absolutely wild. I could not imagine. I don't know that I couldn't imagine. That's so many people in such a small place. So Hamas is very smart about how they use the human shields. They know that Israel is going to be conducting airstrikes at the very least, and they know that they can use that lack of a better term, propaganda, to say, hey world, look, they're bombing civilians. If a civilian gets hit, so they're bombing civilians. They're bad guys. So that kind of goes into their propaganda. So Israel obviously is not very happy about Hamas's incursion. And I say incursion because, well, Hamas gets no respect from me. They're a terrorist group. They have one goal, is to kill innocent people and do it in the most brutal way they know how. Incursion, it's not an invasion because they're not there to ultimately take land. They're not there to hold strategic points. They're there to go into a village, kill as many people as they can before the military gets word of it, and then they run back across and hide in the tunnels under their people. So I have absolutely no respect for them whatsoever. how an evil like that gets put on this earth, I do not know. But it is it's very sad. We'll get into some atrocities that they've committed here in a minute. But talking about villages, one village, it was a village of 1,000 people and 100 were dead. There's a music festival that was going on, and they paraglided in on small motorized paragliders, and dropped down and killed 250 concert goers, or is a rave or something of that extent. Just probably college age kids just at a music festival. So that's just a few horrible things that they've done. In response, the Prime Minister of Israel, I'm not going to try to say his name because I will butcher it. He said Hamas is going to be completely destroyed. Again, they've fought Hamas a few times in the past 10 years, 20 years or so. But this time, he said they will be wiped out. They will be destroyed completely. Hamas had their chance. They will be wiped from the earth. And I think all the Jewish people, everyone of Israel, and every Jewish person around the world that supports Israel is probably saying the same thing right now. So Israel has called up their reserves. There's 360,000 troops waiting at the border between Gaza or the Gaza Strip and Israel. They're simply waiting for the green light. There has been, I don't know how many, well over 1,000 airstrikes and artillery strikes conducted. If you go, I have the news going right now actually. It's actually saying Hamas is holding an estimated 150 Israeli hostages, so that's a new update that's just breaking here. But they have a live look at Gaza City, and it is, every couple minutes you'll see a big explosion, and a building or two will go down. So it is very, you got to think a couple thousand bombs like that probably landing in a small 25 by 5 mile city. Is going to be very tough. But we do know Israel is going to make an incursion into Gaza City. Again, they have 360,000 troops. That's with tanks, that's with APCs, which is armored personnel carriers. That's with all the equipment I think they'd ever need. It's just, there's a lot. So it's going to happen, and it's going to be probably not a very quick battle. Again, if anyone watching knows about Fallujah, when America went in, it was not very quick. It was door to door, especially with all these blown up buildings and rubble and stuff. It's going to be very tough for them to clear all of it. But the Israeli army, they have an idea of what Gaza City looks like, so they can do it. They can go in and perform probably a little bit better than a foreign country going in. Here's what I find kind of funny in a very dark humor way. Egypt, which controlled, fought Israel, stood with the Palestinians at the Gaza Strip. They have closed their border, so the Israeli government has sent out texts and whatever way they can reach the Palestinian people and said, hey, get out of the city, leave, you must go. While Hamas is saying, don't go, stay in your homes, this is propaganda, they're going to kill you, yada yada, don't leave. Well, the people that do try to leave, the however many thousands that are trying to leave, they're going to the Egyptian border and they can't get through because Egypt closed the border to them. Egypt doesn't want to accept them for whatever reason. In my eyes, it looks like Egypt turned their backs on them, which is a sad thing because obviously I stand with Israel, I support Israel, but if there's small kids, small Palestinians that have that they have no idea what's going on, you have to feel for them, but at the same time, you kind of have to blame the parents, blame the Palestinian people that put these cheered for the Hamas terrorist group to be put in charge, and chant death to America and all these other horrible things, death to Israel, and support Hamas. So it's a horrible situation. It really is, because innocent people are going to die on both sides. But it's just I hate to say it's one of those things, but I was listening to something today, and it said if Hamas laid down, he said if Hamas laid down their weapons, Hamas would be taken out, and Palestine would live without Hamas. The Palestinians would still be there. If Israel laid down their weapons and Hamas went in, every Israeli would be killed. There would be Israel would no longer exist, because that is the one goal of Hamas, is to wipe Israel off the map, because their religious views are not aligned with Islam and with their views. Another couple little facts. Talking about Iran. Iran is obviously a very big issue. It is the country of Iran is the number one supporter of state terrorism. They fund 70% of Hamas's organization. I guess they give them like $100 million a year, which is an insane amount. And then in the West Bank to the north, you have Hezbollah, which is another terrorist group, and they've actually been firing some rockets into Israel today as well from the northeast side. So for Israel, it could turn into a multi-front war. But Iran also funds them, and they're much more sophisticated. They have much better rockets that are fired, and their equipment's just a lot better. So that'd be a very tough battle for Israel. But Iran funds them. I hate to get too political here. Getting religious is one thing, because I think most people watching this either say I don't care about either side, or they say I support Israel. I don't think there's too many people out there saying I support Hamas and their acts. So I don't feel too bad dogging on Hamas a little bit, because quite frankly they deserve it. But politically speaking, going to try not to dog on either party too much. But on September 11th, 2023, a month ago, I guess today, the Biden administration gave $6 billion to Iran for humanitarian support, I guess. And if you think about it, it's not good, because more or less we're funding whatever they want to do with that $6 billion, they can do with it. Now, the Biden administration says no, that money is for humanitarian, it's for food, it's for medical stuff, it's for the Iranian people. Well, if you've watched any of it at all, you're gonna hear the term fungible, I guess, is that context of saying it. But basically that means, we give them $6 billion for feeding their people and helping their people. Well, that means that they can take the $6 billion that they already had, that they're going to use to feed their people, and now they can take it and they can support Hamas, and because Iran doesn't like Israel either. They're very, of course, it's a very pro-Islam country. So they can give the $6 billion that they now have freed up. They can give to Hamas. They can give to Hezbollah. They can give to really any other terrorist group that honestly hates the West or hates Israel. And so that's a very, I think, a very big mistake on our part to give them. It's just, it seems pretty clear not to do it, but maybe there's more I guess, circumstances that we might not see. There's more behind the scenes. A couple other things, really how this affects America. Right now, the American Navy, they have sent a fleet with an aircraft carrier to the region, to the Mediterranean Sea, as a more or less a show of force, saying, "Hey, President Biden has said if you're thinking about messing with Israel, while they're going through this, and talking to other countries or other nations, he said, I have one word: don't." So I think that on top of them sending in a fleet, a Navy fleet, hopefully sends a message. And because right now Israel is, they're vulnerable because they're about to send 360,000 troops into the city, and they're about to go to war on this side. So the last thing they need is a war in the north or a war in the east that would divide their forces. So they're doing that. I heard, this was about an hour ago from when we were filming. Again, it's late at night when we're filming right now. It's probably 11 something Central Time. But there is a rumor that U.S. Marines are on standby in the area, in the region. Again, boots on the ground, I highly doubt it. But again, there is American hostages, so that could have something to do with it. They're trying to plan how to get the hostages back. We don't know a whole lot on that. So I want to touch on, sadly, the people that do support not the Palestinian people, but Hamas itself, and are praising Hamas for going out and committing their atrocities. So let me tell you a little bit the confirmed atrocities that Hamas has committed. Really, just mainly on Saturday, and some of these, sadly, I've seen multiple videos. Just on Twitter. You can go to Twitter, you can type in conflict, and you can see a lot of very brutal things. But we do know that in one place, 40 babies were killed. I don't know if it was maybe a daycare or like a kid's hospital. I'm not sure what it was, but 40 babies were killed, and a number of them were beheaded. Babies, not even they're babies. They've been raping women. They've been killing families in their homes. There's a report that went to one of these villages, and there's still food on the stove from where they were cooking, and then there's just blood on the kitchen floor because they just broke in and started shooting everyone. Again, their one goal is to kill as many Israelis as they can. One video, I had this in because I saw this video on Twitter. So this is the first video I saw, and it was gut-wrenching. The craziest part is he may have been, he may have practiced Judaism or something, or whatever reason he was in Israel, but he was not Israeli. He was not a Jewish race person. He was a Thailand national, and he was inside. It looks like he got hit or something. I'm sure you can find the video, if you want to go watch it. I caution you not to, though, because it's very, very brutal. But it looks like, like when a fighter in a fight, they get knocked out, they kind of stiffen up and they're on the ground, they're kind of moving around, Well, this dude looked like he just got knocked out or hit in the head or something. He's laying on the ground, with laying down with his face up, and one of the Hamas terrorists decided to grab a garden hoe, and it wasn't sharp enough to actually decapitate him. So you can hear in the audio, and I describe this and I stress it so much because it's the reality of the situation. This is just something, that was caught on video. He starts, yelling all these things in Arabic. I don't know half of what it says. But he swings once, and you can hear it, crush the dude's neck. The dude is still alive. hits him in the neck, crushes probably everything in there. And then when I didn't do the trick and the guy was still alive, he hit him again and hit him again and hit him again. And the video cut off. I don't know if, he actually got decapitated or not, but I mean, that man is definitely dead because a Hamas militant, a terrorist decided, you know what, I'm gonna go over there. Oh, here's this guy. I'm gonna take this garden hoe and try to cut his head off. Where that thinking comes from, I couldn't tell you. I mean, it is absolutely atrocious. It's war crimes is an understatement. But that one is one I saw that on, I think, Sunday, and I still remember it very vividly now. There's reports of them, they shoot rockets. The Israeli Iron Dome intercepts those rockets. Again, Hamas has fired, I think it's 5,000 rockets since Saturday. One of those hit, it was either like a kid's hospital or a daycare. Killed multiple people there, including children. There's reports of, there's Holocaust survivors that survived the Holocaust. Adolf Hitler killing Jews, they survived that. They come back, of course they're old now, and then a Hamas terrorist comes in and kills them or takes them hostage. So just absolutely horrible stuff. And then, the biggest thing, they're using hostages and kids and civilians as human shields. Their own people as human shields, which is absolutely horrible. So that gives you an idea of, quite frankly, what these animals, I don't even know if it's appropriate to call them humans, because what they're doing is just, I mean, it's unacceptable. It's worse than, what ISIS would do. They're just there to, kill, and that's it. That's their one thing. They just want to kill people, which is horrible. Most things, it's passive. It's peaceful protest here in America, and for the most part, that is true. And sadly, there are people, especially Palestinian Americans, that are supporting this. They're using the Free Palestine as kind of a cover, in my opinion. They're waving the Palestine flags, saying Free Palestine. But then at the same time, they're also saying, from the river to the sea, we will be free, which is in reference to the Jordan River on the right of Israel to the Mediterranean Sea on the left of Israel. That's an expression saying, hey, we want the land, and you want to kill all the Jewish people. That is what that expression means. So they're saying, Free Palestine, innocent civilians, and then they say that, and they say, we support Hamas, and it completely undermines what they're talking about. So a few people that are, that are straight up not with the Palestinian people, but with the Hamas terrorists and support their acts of their murders that they've committed, is a very famous one you're going to see is Black Lives Matter of Chicago. They put on their, at least Twitter, how I said that that Hamas was using motorized, paragliders. Well, they posted a picture and it said, "We stand with Palestine," which at first, okay, stand with the people, all right, whatever. And then the picture, it's the Palestinian flag, and then it is one of the Hamas terrorists on the paragliders, the motorized paragliders that, of course, as you know, went into that peaceful concert that those people were at and murdered 250 concert goers. Again, you can find video on that. It's absolutely horrible. And the fact that the leader of the Black Lives Matter said, we have to stand with Palestine and we support Palestine and their actions. And of course, when they say Palestine, they mean Hamas because they're putting pictures up of Hamas terrorists and the acts that they're committing in support of it. And they're using, the lie, people of color and Palestine are the same. It's disgusting is what it is. So they're one people, again, here in America that are doing it. Starbucks has also said they support Palestine. Harvard students, there's 30-something different clubs, I guess you could say. They're not saying that we just support Palestine. They're saying we support Hamas and we support their actions. Just straight up. They're not even trying to hide it. And of course, Harvard came out and said, no, that's not the official Harvard, stand on things. But yet they won't specify where they stand on things, which is awful. I mean, Harvard is that's a household name. I mean, that is an elite, prestigious, university. So the fact that, that's happening there is awful. Again, Starbucks. And then protests in New York City. Again, that's where I was talking about. They're walking, they're waving the flag, they're chanting from river to sea, we will be free, and different things like that. And what they started doing is horrible. And these are not, not focused on race thing, the best I can. During Black Lives Matter, you had people of all color, because I'm just thinking of the last, big protests we had I can think of since we're talking about them.
Yeah.
You had people of color, you had white people. It didn't really matter what religion you were or what race you were. Again, that's something I never went out and did, but they didn't really, it was a very diverse group that was behind that. That being right or wrong, Black Lives Matter is for you guys to agree or disagree with. But in these protests, not just in New York but all around the world, I've noticed it is very Palestinian American or Palestinian American, citizens. People that are definitely have. From the interviews that I've seen and stuff, so many of them have family in Palestine or in the Gaza Strip or the West Bank. So they support them 100% no matter what. But they've started waving different Nazi, I guess memorabilia is a good word. I saw one lady, she just pulled up the Nazi flag and held it up. It was chanting, gas the Jews, and just horrible stuff. And it's not only happened in New York. I know there's protests in Michigan. Again, when I say this, it's not 100,000 people coming out, but it is enough to say, wow, this is not good. It's horrible stuff. But around the world, you have stuff in the UK going on. Again, they're doing the same stuff. I think it may have been the New York one that I saw, but this guy was at the protest and he said, Islam is one true religion, everyone will believe it. These are very threatening remarks that he was making. So they're not marching for peace. It's very clear to see that. But around the world, again, the UK, seen some in India and Australia. That one really stuck out to me because they had the whole crowd chanting "Gas the Jews." Wow. That is awful. And to give you an idea, again, how bad this attack was on Israel, this is the most Jewish people have been killed since the Holocaust in 70-something years, which is it's horrible. They're calling it their 9/11. It's Israel's 9/11. The equivalent of them, at 9/11 we lost right under 3,000 people, and countless more from sickness after helping with the buildings and all that. But Israel is not a very big country. It's roughly the size of New Jersey. It has, I believe it said 9 million people, or maybe 11 million, something like that. Well, I'm pretty sure like 9 million people. So when they lose 1,200 plus people in a day, that's the equivalent of a terrorist group that you can compare it to like the cartel walking in to America through the southern border, walking into Texas and shooting 35,000 people in a day, and then taking so many thousands hostage would be the equivalent of it. That would be like the ratio of it. So it's an absolutely wild, horrible thing to think about. In the government, so many people on both sides of the aisle, Republican and Democrat, stand with Israel, which is great. I think we should. Some people that don't. Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, she has a Palestinian flag outside of her office, and a reporter caught her in a hallway, going somewhere, wherever it was, in a government building, and tried to ask her. She said, "What do you have to say about the killing and the beheading of the babies, as we've talked about?" And she asked her, I think, like 10 times, and she didn't say anything. And like when she said it, she looked back like what a stupid. She had that face like, oh, what a stupid question, It was sickening to watch. And then also Ilhan Omar, she's a congresswoman. She's kind of in the same boat there, but luckily it's only a few people that are thinking that. The majority does not see eye to eye with them. Earlier today, 4 or 6 hours ago maybe, this Friday the 13th, I believe it's the 13th, Palestinians are calling on a day of resistance. What all that entails, I do not know. It's not just here in America, it's around the world. Again, Palestinians aren't just supporting Hamas and Palestinians. It's all countries. Russia supports them. China supports them. Iran supports them. Iraq supports them. Afghanistan. The Taliban said, "Hey, you let us know, and we'll go down to Israel. You just tell us when to go." I mean, there's so many people that hate Israel. Again, it's such a big holy war. But Day of Resistance, whatever that means, I've been seeing stuff that just says stay vigilant. Look out if you see something suspicious. If you see something weird, don't be afraid. If you're here in America, if you're in another country, it doesn't matter. If you see something that is just, I'm not saying go profile. Don't do anything bad like that. But if you'll know it if you see it. Like if you just see something that's just not sitting right with you, especially on a Friday, because it's a very big. If me, just some dude in America is able to see this, what they're calling Day of Resistance, and get enough info on it to be able to tell you guys about it. It has some backbone to it. Hopefully, it's all talk and nothing happens. But yeah, that's just something. A little note I thought I'd add on to the end. And again, it's Palestinian supporters, Hamas supporters, groups within America, or not just around the world, but within America. Saying this or saying rise up, and just some crazy stuff. This is one of the things in history. Things like this we may never see again in our lifetime. This is very, very much, historical events that have a lot of impact on no matter the outcome, good, bad, indifferent. This will definitely leave a mark on everyone involved for quite some time. So I thought it was important to cover it as soon as possible, give people updates. If there's anyone confused when they might watch this, and just give them the facts. Being a Christian, I think personally, all Christians should be supporting Israel right now. I don't think there should be any indifference in it. They're God's people in the Promised Land, and they're being killed for their belief, which is just awful. But with that being said, we're going to close it out. So thank you guys.